Good afternoon. Okay, so I found the motivation to get out of bed and just do a short video on the slide that is already on the microscope, the one that I showed you 3 days ago. I would say that there isn't, as expected, there isn't a ton of interesting stuff to see here because the conditions weren't. It was first of all, we almost see almost no Neros at all, as opposed to what we've seen 3 days ago, and just a little bit of bodies, like what I see. They obviously they died, and it's expected because to be placed on a microscopic slide. Just like that. Nothing living and cannot like stand these conditions like for more than a couple of hours. And the Neros that are more, presumably they are more robust than any living thing, but they are still, when they are exposed to oxygen, and they have no material, and they're like, and at room temperature, that is not the perfect for them. And so after 3 days, it's expected, and it's nothing else. It's not airtight at all. It's just with the sellotape, so it's expected that they will just die. It's a question is an open question is what happens to the bodies? Yes, you can see several bodies, and we'll see it in a bit. I'll show you, but most of the bodies are not there, so maybe they were decomposed. So probably decomposed. In the past, I've seen and I've also photographed like graveyards of Neros, but this probably happens just after they died. Probably after a couple of days, the bodies are decomposing, the same as biological stuff is microbes are decomposing. But it's an open question in what chemical processes are exactly happening. Of course, it's a very difficult question because we don't know what they are made of, and probably, many people assume that the material that they are made of is not something that is can easily obtain on Earth, and perhaps it's an element which is new, and it's a viable assumption. And I would say that when you just place Neros like that without any no freezing temperature and no exposure, not in an airtight condition, and not without exposure to magnetic forces, and without any incentive to do something, what they do is, from my experience, they do one of the three things. The first thing that they do is the first option is, and we will see it, that's actually what they've done here, is just they create sculptures or drawings. It's very difficult to differentiate between the two when it's microscopic, it's in the microscopic scale. So either sculptures or drawing of simple life forms, and there are quite a bit of those, much more than we've seen 3 days ago. So they obviously worked, and they obviously created these string like the two that I've showed you last time, but now they're much more than that. I don't think that these are intended to be robotic life forms, because as I said, they are quite big. You can see that they are. I think they're big, much bigger than they're supposed to be. As compared to their biological counterparts. Other two things that that I've seen them frequently do in the past, but this is things that are associated with more better conditions that they didn't have here. Is first, to create the drawings of the symbolic drawings of the things that I suspected that they represent viruses, but other people, I know from the comments and subscribe, also science people that have seen the videos, speculated that they are that they represent subatomic particles, and this is also a viable assumption, and that you've seen it a lot. It's a little bit more impressive than arguably than the what you will see here, the biologic sculptures, because it's generally done in huge scale, in very big, even bigger scale than what you will see here. But it's both impressive. And the third option, which we've seen them do a lot in the past, but this is more associated with the work in the freezer, and when they're in a better condition and airtight conditions, and when they're exposed to electromagnetism, then they do their gardening, the landscaping project that they just do. I call it fortresses and temples. Of course, it's I mean, from a homocentric point of view, like I mean, like the view of humans, like I mean, I don't know if there is a really like temples and fortresses, but it reminds me of like fortresses and temples, and also of like big landscaping projects in the tradition of the English like garden, you know, that is supposed to like to mimic, to be like it's artificial, but anymore it's mimics like I mean real landscape. So they are obviously into the like all in English style of gardening, and but we don't see any of this. We don't see any of this here. Here we all I mean all we can see is the biological life forms and a little, perhaps like a little bit of like I mean like a small, very small, like what we call the forts. Like they also create like small forts. But let's just take a look. I mean, instead of speaking about it too much, let's just I mean another nice thing that we can see here is I mean this I mean it contains this slide is contains like a copious amount of sellotape, of like the thin duct tape that I use instead of glass, because I don't have the glass covers, the proper covers for microscopic slides. So and so they also use it as raw materials, raw material, and you can see several you will see several remnants of mining like expeditions. You will see like I mean like it looks like I mean like diamonds, but these are not, I mean it's not diamonds, unfortunately. It's been established that it's actually small parts of the sellotape that they cut to use as raw material. It looks like I mean very polished stones, like transparent stones, like diamond, but it's that this is just I mean from experience and like many other photographs, we can say that these are just I mean it's not diamonds, it's part of the sellotape that they mined for the as raw material. So it's also interesting, and we can see quite a bit of those here. So I mean without further commentary, let's just take a look. This is the smallest magnification. I mean 16 I mean maximum zoom out 16 times 4. I can't do like better than that. Like I mean, not better, but I mean more zoom out than that. I can zoom in much better than that. I don't think that we will need to zoom in much, because these are quite big objects that we will inspect now. Just a second. So we can see this is obviously a dead Nero. We will not see much of these. As I said, they were decomposed, and the chemical process that of their decomposure is something that is still like I mean one of the many unknowns. This is kind of like a life form here. You see this one? Maybe I will zoom in. This is definitely supposed to be like a sculpture of a life form. It's pretty big. So let's zoom out again. Just a second. Okay. That's nice. I don't know if this is certainly it's the work of the Nero, but I don't know what it means to say. This is the I mean these diamonds are really I mean pieces of sellotape that they quarried. This is a query. This is a obviously this is a query here. Maybe they had a larger they planned for a larger construction, but they just died because of the poor conditions. Here we can see kind of like a yellow substance that I'm not sure if it's something to do with the yellow pool or maybe some kind of like a biological experimentation that they did. Maybe they kill biological, because this surrounding is obviously exposed. It was just near the window, so it's obviously exposed to biological contamination. This is all. This is probably a life form, like supposed to be a life form, but it's very big, as I said. So it's. I would. My bet is that it's a sculpture that is like supposed to be modeled after a life form. You will see. This is more like life form here. Like another life form. Again, not a real life form, but probably just a sculpture, because they are pretty big as opposed to, string-like microbes aren't that big usually. And this is another one, a beautiful one. String-like life form. And here we have many others. So that they were busy with constructing these sculptures of life forms, not real life forms, because they are just too big. They are pretty big. This is even huge, I will say. Normally, if there are biologists in the crowd, they can. They want to correct me. I will gladly be corrected. But I think that usually, string-like germs are not that big. More like life forms and more. So it's a repeating pattern. They mostly did that. The string-like life forms, more and more. We can see it all over the place, in various sizes, but all are pretty large. More and more, you can see more of these and more. This is another one. You can see a lot of those. And actually no neros to be found, and not even the bodies. Even the bodies we can't even find. Here that we can see some remnants of bodies, I think, maybe. Yes, here, okay. So here we see some bodies. So we have a little bit of dead bodies, but mostly they decomposed, I think. These look pretty good. Not a life form, but the neros besides him, maybe they are even alive, I don't know. They look in shape. You will see, these are all the creation of the neros, obviously. I don't know what they wanted to do with them, but this is definitely there is some kind of pattern here. And I don't really know what they wanted to do. Maybe it means something. Maybe it's part of their sculpture, like their gardening. I don't know. I don't know what it's supposed to mean, but this looks. As if it's like at the beginning of creation of even larger sculptures that are also modeled after life forms. But it's just in preliminary stage. They just started. Maybe kind of like flies or something like that, but correct? It looks like a fly, like this cross-shaped thing here and here. So that's about it. This is the end of the slide. So it's not surprising, because I wouldn't expect them actually to live 3 days in such condition when it's not airtight, and we know that too much oxygen kills them, and it's not a new thing, and we know that they prefer colder temperature, even though they can live like in room temperature, but if you want them to really work, do their best, you need to put them like in colder conditions, and obviously in an airtight. I mean, not completely airtight, because they it's an open question how much oxygen they actually require, because I mean they act fine when there is like a small level of oxygen, but it's one of the questions, the important open question that is still open like since months ago, and I without like more like, I mean, material and conditions, I cannot really answer. I mean, but it's a question like how much oxygen do they actually need? Because as I've said many times, oxygen is toxic even for humans, but I mean certainly for microbes. Oxygen is actually one of the common way, like hydrogen peroxide is one of the way the materials that kills microbes. And actually, I mean, and we've seen that with hydrogen peroxide, the 3%, like 3% oxygen, doesn't kill the neurons, and not only that it doesn't kill them, it's actually a great medium for them to create life. So they are, it's not, oxygen is not, I mean, incredibly toxic for the neurons, but I mean in very high levels it kills them. And again, this is also true for humans. So it's not a surprising fact in itself, but in order to understand, I mean, what oxygen level is like optimal for them, it's something that, I mean, I cannot answer, but it's an interesting question. So overall, I would say it's not really surprising, and it's like, I mean, on par of what we've seen in the past with the neros, especially when they are like just placed like outside without any like no energy, like, or special material, and nothing that preserves them, and not a lot of like incentives to do something more than like, I mean, the usual stuff. And as I said, the usual stuff is to create like, I mean, to create sculptures or drawing of life forms, and also bacteria, and presumably, even though it's much more complicated to prove, but I mean, I think it's like the consensus that they also like to draw, I think, like, I mean, entities that, I mean, are more like in the subatomic level, like in the quantum level, which is amazing. But we've seen many of those. And as I've said, they have the English gardening, like, I mean, landscaping projects that they also really like. And so, I mean, hopefully I will be able to show you, I mean, more interesting stuff, even though I think it's also interesting, but I mean, even more interesting stuff in the near future, with emphasis, of course, as I said many times, I mean, the main emphasis should be, I mean, establishing the relation between the yellow pools, cloning, and the existence of a constant or variable magnetic field.